Listen, there's a sneaky trap waiting for smart people. And honestly, most of them never even notice they've walked straight into it. It's the trap of thinking you're the sharpest knife in the drawer, the brightest bulb in the room. And I'm telling you right now, this is one of the most dangerous places your mind can land, though probably not for the reasons running through your head at this moment. When I say dangerous, I'm not talking about some disaster that'll crash down on you tomorrow. I'm talking about a danger that creeps in slowly, quietly, like rust eating away at metal. I'm talking about danger to your growth, to your understanding, to your ability to see the world as it really is, not as you think it is. Because the second you convince yourself that you're the smartest cookie in any situation, something wild happens. You slam the door on learning. And when you stop learning, your brain starts dying, even though you can't feel it happening. Let me break this down for you. Intelligence, the way most folks think about it, is really just spotting patterns. It's seeing connections that others miss. Understanding how things work together, solving puzzles, thinking in ways that aren't so obvious. And when you're genuinely sharper than the people standing around you, you start noticing something pretty intoxicating. You see stuff they can't see. You predict things they never saw coming. You get implications that fly right past their heads like birds they didn't even know were there. And this creates a really tempting illusion, a dangerous one. The illusion whispers this lie that because you can think faster, deeper, more cleverly than others, you've got nothing left to learn from them. You start seeing other people as less than you, as inferior creatures, as kids who need you to hold their hand and explain the world. And once you've planted yourself on this high horse, once you've put yourself above everyone else like this, you've built yourself a cage that's incredibly hard to escape from. Here's the brutal truth about what happens next. When you believe you're the genius in the room, you stop truly hearing what others are saying. Sure, you might look like you're listening. You'll nod, smile, wait for your turn to talk. But you're not actually absorbing what they're saying with any real openness. Instead, you're already cooking up your comeback, already spotting the holes in their thinking, already getting ready to show off your superior grasp of things. You've twisted conversation into a battle you absolutely must win. And in doing that, you miss something absolutely critical. You miss the fact that intelligence, as awesome as it is just one way of understanding the world. There are other kinds of knowing, other kinds of wisdom that have zero connection to what we usually call being smart. There's wisdom that comes from actually living through things. There's insight that comes from feeling deeply. There's understanding that comes from noticing things that brainy analysis usually ignores completely. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're a brilliant engineer, someone who can design crazy complex systems, someone who gets math and physics at a level that makes most people's heads spin. You're chatting with, say, a gardener, someone who spent their entire life working with dirt and plants. Now, if you're stuck in that trap of thinking you're the smartest person around, you might glance at this gardener and think, what could this person possibly show me? I understand biology, chemistry, all the science behind how plants grow. But here's what you completely miss. The gardener knows things that no book can teach you, things that only come from thousands of hours of watching, trying, failing, succeeding, touching, smelling, being right there with living, growing things. The gardener knows how this exact patch of dirt responds when rain comes, how that particular plant acts through different seasons, what the tiny early signs of sickness look like before anyone else would notice them. This is knowledge that your sharp brain can't hand you, no matter how high you scored on any test. And if you brush off this knowledge because it doesn't come wrapped in fancy theories and systematic breakdowns, you've just proven not how smart you are, but how blind you've become. You've confused one type of knowing with all types of knowing. You've mistaken the menu for the meal, and this is the real danger lurking in believing you're the smartest person in the room. It makes you stupid in ways you'll never spot. Now let's dig even deeper into this mess. There's another layer to this trap that's even more sneaky. When you're constantly the sharpest person wherever you go, you stop getting pushed. And without push, without resistance, Your thinking gets lazy and soft. It's like a muscle that never gets worked out. You build certain thinking habits, certain ways of tackling problems, and because nobody around you can really challenge these habits, they harden like concrete. They become rules you never question, even though you might tell yourself you're open-minded and logical. You see, intelligence without humility is just fancy stupidity dressed up nice. And humility can't exist when you're convinced you're intellectually superior to everyone. Real humility comes from knowing that no matter how much you know, it's a tiny drop compared to the ocean of what you don't know. It comes from understanding that every single person you bump into knows something you don't, has lived through something you haven't, sees the world from an angle that's completal. Why? Invisible to you. The smartest people I've ever met, the truly wise ones, had this amazing quality. They could talk to absolutely anyone and find something fascinating, something worth knowing, something to learn. They didn't treat conversations like stages to perform their intelligence on. They treated them like treasure hunts for discovering something new. And because of this openness, because of this real curiosity about how other people see things, they kept growing and changing their whole lives. But the person who's trapped in being the smartest in the room stops growing. They might pile up more facts, but they don't develop real wisdom. They become, in a way, frozen in place intellectually. They keep using the same thinking patterns, the same ways of breaking things down for every new situation they face. And because nobody pushes back effectively, they never discover where these patterns fall apart. Here's another danger worth chewing on. When you're the smartest person in the room, you end up isolated. Not necessarily physically alone, but psychologically cut off, because you've separated yourself from others through your sense of being intellectually above them. You can't form real connections anymore. You relate to them like a teacher to students, like an expert to beginners, but not like one real human being to another real human being. And this isolation costs you. You start living entirely in your head, in your ideas, in your theories and concepts. You lose touch with the messy, complicated, confusing reality of actual human life. You become, weirdly enough, less intelligent about the things that actually matter most in life. The things that make living worthwhile, like relationships, meaning, purpose, love, connection. I've watched this happen to extremely sharp people. They can break down complex systems, crack tough problems, understand abstract ID, as that most people can't even wrap their minds around. But they're totally clueless about basic human nature. They don't get why people do what they do. They're constantly shocked by emotional reactions that seem obvious to everyone else around them. They've pumped up one part of their intelligence so much that other parts have withered away. And here's the twisted irony. The smarter you are, the better you can justify your blind spots. You can build entire belief systems to explain why your weaknesses aren't really weaknesses, why your limits aren't really limits. You can rationalize your isolation, your disconnect, your failure to learn from others. You can convince yourself you're not trapped at all, just surrounded by people who don't get you. But this is delusion at its finest, and it's delusion that intelligence itself makes possible. This is why I'm telling you that being the smartest person in the room is dangerous. It's not dangerous because others will hate you, though they might. It's not dangerous because you'll end up lonely, though you probably will. It's dangerous because it creates a special kind of blindness, a blindness to your own blindness. Now let me tackle something that might be bothering you as you hear this. You might be thinking, but what if I really am sharper than the people around me? What if this isn't arrogance, just seeing reality clearly? Should I pretend to be dumber than I am? And the answer is absolutely not. I'm not saying you should deny your intelligence or fake being something you're not. What I'm pushing you toward is something much bigger. I'm suggesting you question the whole framework that splits people into smarter and dumber, sharpest and dullest. I'm suggesting this framework itself might be the real problem. You see, when we talk about someone being the smartest person in the room, we're assuming intelligence is one PL thing you can measure on a scale. But this is massively oversimplified. Intelligence isn't one thing. It's tons of things. There's thinking intelligence, feeling intelligence, creative intelligence, practical intelligence, people intelligence, body intelligence, and types of intelligence we probably haven't even named yet. When you really get this, when you truly understand that intelligence is many-dimensional and depends on the situation, the whole idea of being the smartest person in the room starts falling apart. You might be more analytically sharp than others in the room, but someone else might read emotions better. Someone else might have better practical sense of how to actually get things done. Someone else might be more creative, more intuitive, more tuned into subtle social currents. And here's what's really fascinating. The person who sees this, who can appreciate different types of intelligence, who can learn from people no matter what they scored on tests, this person becomes smarter in a way that goes beyond normal measures. They become wise. Wisdom, I'd say, is what intelligence looks like when it's mixed with humility, openness, and real curiosity about the world. Let me tell you about the biggest danger of all in being the smartest person in the room. It's that you stop asking questions. And the moment you stop asking questions, the moment you think you've got everything figured out, you've lost the very thing that makes intelligence valuable in the first place. You've lost your beginner's mind, your ability to wonder, your capacity to be surprised by reality. Kids are natural learners because they're always asking questions. They haven't built up the ego investment in being right, in looking smart, in keeping up a consistent image of themselves as knowledgeable. They can say, "I don't know," without shame. They can admit confusion without embarrassment. They can change their minds without feeling like they've lost some core part of themselves. But as we get older, especially if people praise us for being smart, we start tying our identity to our knowledge, to our ability to grasp things quickly, to our capacity to look intelligent in front of others. And this identity becomes a prison. We can't afford to not know anymore, to be confused, to be wrong, because these states threaten who we think we are. So we stop asking real questions. We ask fake questions designed to show off what we know. We ask leading questions designed to push people toward conclusions we've already reached. But we don't ask the kind of open, honest questions that might actually lead to discovering something we didn't already know. And in losing the ability to ask real questions, we lose the ability to learn in any meaningful way. Think about this carefully. If you're in a room full of people, and you believe you're the smartest one there, what reason do you have to ask them questions? You already know more than they do, or so you tell yourself. So instead of asking and listening, you tell and explain. You turn every conversation into a lecture hall. And while you might be right in your explanations, while you might actually understand certain topics better, you're not growing. You're just replaying what you already know. But the person who asks real questions, who approaches each conversation with curiosity instead of superiority, who can say, I don't understand, tell me more, this person is learning all the time. They're growing, evolving, expanding how they understand the world. And over time, no matter where they started, they become wiser than the person who knew more at first but stopped learning. There's an old Zen saying that fits perfectly here. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. When you're the expert, when you're the smartest person in the room, you approach situations with a fixed way of understanding. You already know how things work, what the answers are, what the right approach is. But the beginner, exactly because they don't know, is open to possibilities the expert can't even see. This is why some of the biggest breakthroughs in different fields come from outsiders, from people who aren't the recognized experts, who aren't the smartest people in the room by usual standards. They ask different questions because they're not boxed in by accepted wisdom. They see different possibilities because they're not trapped in established thinking patterns. Their supposed lack of smarts turns out to be a kind of freedom. Now, I want to address something that might seem contradictory. I'm not saying intelligence doesn't matter, or that all views are equally valid, or that we should pretend differences in thinking ability don't exist. What I'm saying is more nuanced than that. I'm saying the value of intelligence isn't in separating yourself from others, isn't in building intellectual hierarchy, but in understanding and engaging with reality more fully. And here's the paradox that'll blow your mind. The more you use your intelligence to separate yourself from others, to prove your superiority, the worse your intelligence actually works. Because intelligence at its best is a tool for connection, for understanding, for seeing how things relate to each other. When you use it instead as a weapon, as a way to keep distance between yourself and others, you're twisting its very purpose. The truly intelligent person knows they need other people, not despite their smarts, but because of them. They understand their thinking is shaped by their specific background, their specific experiences, their specific biases and blind spots. They understand that other people, exactly because they're different, exactly because they see the world from different angles, offer something valuable. They offer correction, challenge, different perspectives, pieces of the puzzle the intelligent person can't see on their own. This is why the smartest move an intelligent person can make is to deliberately put themselves in situations where they're not the smartest person in the room. To hunt down people who know more, who understand better, who can challenge their thinking and expose their assumptions. This takes guts because it means risking looking foolish, risking having your favorite beliefs questioned, risking the discomfort of real intellectual challenge. But this discomfort is exactly where growth happens, when you're comfortable, when you're unchallenged. When everyone around you is nodding at everything you say, you're not growing. You're rotting. You might feel good, you might feel validated, but you're not developing, you're just strengthening what you already think. Let me tell you something else about being the smartest person in the room. It's boring as hell. It's intellectually suffocating. If you're genuinely intelligent, genuinely curious, genuinely interested in ideas and understanding, being surrounded by people who can't challenge you is like being a tennis player who only plays against opponents you can crush easily. You might win every game, but you're not getting better. You're actually getting worse because you're not being pushed, not being tested, not being forced to develop new strategies and skills. The intelligent person who hunts for intellectual challenge, who deliberately puts themselves in situations where they might be wrong, where they might not have the answer, where they might have to struggle to understand. This person keeps developing their whole life. They stay flexible, adaptable, open to new ideas. He don't harden into fixed thinking patterns. And here's something that might shock you. The people most secure in their intelligence are often most willing to admit when they don't know something, when they're confused, when they need help understanding. They're not threatened by their lack of knowledge in certain areas because their sense of self isn't tied to always being right, always being the smartest, always having the answer. But the person who's insecure about their intelligence, who's constantly trying to prove how smart they are, who can't admit to not knowing something, this person is trapped. They're trapped in a performance, a constant act of showing their intelligence to themselves and others. And this performance blocks real learning, real growth, real understanding. So what's the way out? How do you dodge the trap of being the smartest person in the room? The answer is surprisingly simple, though not easy at all. You grow what Zen calls don't know mind. You approach each situation, each person, each conversation with real openness to learning something new. You ask real questions. You listen, wanting to understand, not wanting to prepare your response. You let yourself be changed by what you hear instead of filtering everything through your existing understanding. You recognize that every person you meet, no matter their measured intelligence, no matter their education level, no matter their social status, has something to teach you. It might not be what you expect. It might not come in the form of abstract ideas or systematic analysis. But if you're paying attention, if you're genuinely open, you'll find it. And maybe most importantly, you hold your own intelligence lightly. You don't tie your identity to it. You don't make it the center of who you are. You recognize it as a tool, a useful tool, certainly, but just a tool. It's not who you are. It's something you can use to engage with the world better, but it's not a measure of your worth as a human being. When you do this, when you step out of the trap of needing to be the smartest person in the room, something beautiful happens. You become free to learn from anyone, free to be wrong, free to change your mind, free to say, I don't know, free to be genuinely curious about other people's views. And in this freedom, you discover something paradoxical and wonderful. You discover that by giving up the need to be the smartest person in the room, you actually become wiser. Not more intelligent in the usual sense maybe, but wiser. You develop a more complete, more realistic understanding of the world. You see things you couldn't see before. You understand things you couldn't grasp before. You connect with people in ways that weren't possible before. And you realize finally that the real danger of being the smartest person in the room wasn't that people would resent you or that you'd be lonely, though both might be true. The real danger was that you'd stop growing, you'd stop evolving, you'd become frozen in a specific thinking pattern, a specific way of seeing the world, and you'd miss the incredible richness and complexity of reality that's always available to those who approach life with real humility and curiosity. So here's my challenge to you. If you find yourself in situations where you're the smartest person in the room, change rooms. Find people who push you, who know things you don't know, who see things you don't see. And when you can't change rooms, change your mindset. Approach everyone you meet as a potential teacher. Ask genuine questions. Listen with real openness. Let yourself be surprised, confused, uncertain. This is how you escape the trap. This is how you keep growing. This is how intelligence transforms into wisdom. And wisdom, unlike intelligence, CE doesn't separate you from others. It connects you. It helps you see the extraordinary complexity and beauty of reality, including the reality of other people in all their messy, complicated, surprising, wonderful humanity.